I, 28F, found out that my husband, 30M, has been hiding his massive credit card debt from me. How do I handle this? I rarely post on Reddit, and I feel extremely anxious after learning this, so I apologize if my thoughts come out jumbled. Additionally, for clarification, I do not need financial advice. The problem lies in my husband deliberately withholding information from me. Here is some background about my husband and me. When we first got together, I was a full-time college student. I worked 2 jobs and saved every dollar I could so that I could quit and complete my degree in 2018. Meanwhile, my husband worked in the oil industry and earned remarkable income for someone his age. At the start of our relationship, he covered nearly all expenses except for my personal costs, like my phone bill, gas, and car insurance, which I paid from my own savings. In 2020, we struck it big when we decided to purchase a house together, primarily using his income since I had just graduated. We acquired a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home with a mortgage that was under $1,000 a month. During this time, I took control of our finances. It wasn't a choice I wanted to make. My husband has ADHD, which means he often forgets to pay bills and accumulates late fees that harm his credit. I've been managing my own finances since I was a teenager, and I prefer staying organized so I know exactly where my money goes and when. We married in early 2022, and he switched to a job that paid slightly less but was closer to home. Everything seemed to be running smoothly. Fast forward to mid-2023, my husband and I had a disagreement stemming from communication issues. This led me to stay with some family for almost 2 months. During that time, I was completely unaware of his financial situation or how he was spending his money. I deleted access to his bank account and focused solely on myself while searching for new employment. After several extensive discussions, we decided to reconcile. I returned home, and we worked on improving our communication and understanding of one another. At that point, I opted to keep our finances separate, as I had resumed working and enjoyed having my own income. We agreed that he would cover the mortgage, which was $1,000, I would pay the utilities, totaling around $700, and we would share any costs for home improvements or property taxes. I managed our mortgage account to ensure we didn't fall behind, but made payments using his checking account. In early 2024, I landed an incredible job, transitioning from part-time work in the service industry to a full-time position in a corporate environment. At this stage, I was earning a good income, and together our financial situation was thriving. We lived comfortably, met our expenses, maintained healthy savings, enjoyed vacations, and I indulged in my hobbies. I believed we were an effective team. I even decided to purchase a substantial vehicle after my previous one was totaled due to a natural disaster. I bought a nearly $60,000 car, paying about half as a down payment and financing the remainder. We had discussed this for months, and I communicated that I would handle the car payment while he would contribute $300 monthly towards the insurance for both our vehicles. However, in recent months, he has been late on sending me the $300 for our insurance. It didn't seem to matter much since my income was sufficient to cover it, so I just paid it myself, asking him to send the money when he could. Although it was strange, I assumed he just forgot since he still paid for our date nights and expenses for himself. Last month, I asked him if he was prepared for me to make the mortgage payment, and he became visibly uncomfortable. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, and said, yeah, you can send it now." Alarm bells went off in my mind. I inquired whether he had merely shifted money from his savings to cover the mortgage payment. He squirmed again. My husband has a rather pricey hobby attending music festivals. I've always been supportive since we share a love for music. Although I have accompanied him to festivals, I personally dislike crowds, and standing for extended periods is hard on my knees, so he typically attends these events with friends while I enjoy quiet time at home. Anyone familiar with festivals knows they can become expensive quickly. Tickets can cost several $100s, and when travel and accommodations are factored in, costs easily exceed $1,000. He attends about 4 festivals each year, with local concerts in between. This year, he purchased tickets to Electric Daisy Carnival in Las Vegas to attend with his brother and friends. He bought the tickets without consulting me, which I found disappointing but chose to let him do as he pleased since it was his money. He even bought an extra ticket for me, hoping I would want to join, but I declined. Last night, as I was preparing to submit his mortgage payment, he requested that I postpone it until his next paycheck. I looked at him in confusion and asked where all of his funds were going. He again opened his phone, squirming and avoiding eye contact, and awkwardly mentioned that, due to my increased workload, we had been dining out more frequently. I responded with another look, reminding him that during our outings I always offered to pay, and he declined. He appeared flustered, stammering while scrolling through his phone, avoiding my gaze. I asked to see his bank statement, and reluctantly, he handed his phone over. To my disbelief, his accounts were nearly empty. He had so little left that we could barely survive a month on his checking or savings. It was then that I noticed a credit card bill of nearly $400 charged to his account each month. I panicked and demanded to know how much he owed on that card. He revealed that he was nearly $12,000 in debt and was on a payment plan for the Electric Daisy Carnival tickets, adding another $120 each month until May. I was stunned into silence. I knew he struggled with managing money, but he had always criticized others for being in such dire debt, so I never anticipated this. I asked why he never discussed this matter with me, to which he replied that he feared I would react negatively. I informed him that this was not a valid reason to keep such information from me. At this point, I am unsure what to do. I feel numb and am still processing everything. I could not sleep last night, and now, while at work, it is all I can think about. The worst part is, I would have been more than willing to assist him had he just been truthful with me. Instead, he concealed it and allowed it to become a growing issue. We will likely have to depend on my income to cover our expenses while he struggles to pay off this massive debt. In retrospect, he should have been upfront about this financial burden during our discussions regarding my car purchase. I would have refrained from acquiring something so costly if I had known my husband was living paycheck to paycheck. I have already formulated a plan and told him not to spend any money from his paycheck until we can reevaluate our budget. He will operate on a strict $100 a week for gas and food, and he's already complaining about it. Furthermore, he will not receive any financial support for attending music festivals, given that he has taken on more than he can manage financially. He will need to pay off the tickets and sell them once they arrive. This has been the only discussion we have had so far. I have not spoken with him since then, and I am unsure what to say. I find myself reconsidering the entire dynamic of our marriage. I seek guidance on how to handle this situation regarding his concealment of information. If he is willing to hide this from me, what else might he be concealing? While I am not prepared to end this marriage, I know my husband is a good person and loving partner. I simply do not understand why he chose to keep all of this from me. Any advice on how to move forward would be appreciated. Story 2. Born into a struggling family, I faced challenges in school, fought for my dreams, and despite being an artist, I am still unemployed. So I have decided to express my feelings. I am an Indian from the South, and I will try to keep this as concise as possible. I was born into a middle-class family as the second son. I have one older brother and one younger brother. As you might suspect, I struggle with most things, whereas my brothers excel in nearly everything. My mother is attractive and has a brown complexion, while my father has a fair complexion and an average face shape, which makes him quite appealing. Both of my brothers have fair skin, while I am somewhat brown and below average in appearance. Additionally, my father has a stuttering problem, which I am the only one to inherit. My mother suffers from short-term memory loss. She can recall small things like where she placed an item or whether she added salt to a dish. Unfortunately, I seem to have inherited that issue as well. In terms of luck, I feel quite unfortunate. My father was relatively affluent, owning some bars and shops, but after my birth, he lost nearly everything. He fell into debt, and my uncle financially supported him without expecting repayment. He even helped us. This illustrates just how unfortunate my father was. Following that, my elder brother attended an English medium school, while both of us attended a government school. As you can guess, our English skills are quite poor. My brother worked diligently to pass his classes. After 4 attempts, he stopped trying and accepted a regular but demanding job. He worked there for 2 years, earning around $12,000, after which he joined a prominent company, resulting in a significant salary increase over 6 years, bringing his income to over $120,000 per month. As for my younger brother, he is exceptionally intelligent, with an aptitude that is off the charts. His memory is 10 times better than mine. He can remember anything after reading it just 2 or 3 times. He achieved good grades and has recently completed his studies. Although he faced challenges when he tried something demanding and dropped out after 3 attempts, he is now looking for a job. Since he and my older brother are in the same field, my brother recommended him to his company, and he is on the verge of securing a position. Now, regarding my experience as an average child after completing elementary school, my friends and I applied to a below-average school that charged little to no fees, which was a non-English medium institution. Interestingly, we were a total of 6 friends. By the time we reached the 8th grade, there were 2 sections A and B. As you can guess, I was the only one placed in Section B, while the others were all in Section A together. The only positive aspect was that we had some attractive girls in my section. When it came time for pre-university course, PUC, I had planned to take science, a decision I made in the 5th grade when they introduced the subject to us. It intrigued me greatly. After receiving my 10th grade results, my relatives visited, and when my mother sought their advice, I expressed my desire to pursue science. As expected, our relatives warned that pursuing science was a poor choice based on their own negative experiences, so I ended up enrolling in commerce. On result day, I studied diligently as someone aspiring to take science. I believed I could achieve at least an 85. However, when the results were announced, I received a score of 79. Of all my major subjects, my grades were near 90, but my grades in 2 languages were around 60, which brought my average down to 79. Next, I aimed to become an engineer, specifically in computer science, CS. I enrolled in a diploma program, and luckily, I received a quota seat, although not in my preferred branch. I joined and learned a little along the way. However, when it was time for our final semester exams, our coursework was disrupted, and exams were postponed for 6 months. The engineering college decided to allocate seats based on the 5th semester performance. The new policy stated that if we failed in the 6th semester, we would be expelled from the college. Thus, I joined the engineering program. The fees for engineering were approximately $30,000. However, due to circumstances, they could not provide full scholarships for students from their campus. I forgot to mention that the diploma college is affiliated with their institution, and if a student studied in a non-English medium school and completed their diploma on campus, they would receive fee concessions. So, the fees, which were around $30,000, increased to $150,000 per year. Consequently, I took out an education loan to cover the expenses. Currently, I am enrolled in both the 6th semester of my diploma and the 3rd semester of my B.Tech course. Both exam schedules coincided. My results came in for the diploma, and I passed those exams. To do so, I studied for an exhaustive 14 hours every day throughout the month. Ironically, for the 3rd semester exam, which was based on the assignments we completed, I never studied rigorously, leading to a lower grade. As I prepared for the 4th semester, I started studying from the very beginning and maintained a daily study routine. Although our rules changed, and we didn't have mid-term assessments, my grades and assignments were quite good. Unfortunately, our 4th semester grades relied on both the 3rd semester and assignments, causing my grades to drop. To alleviate this impact, they added another opportunity for grade improvement, for which I applied. While I was preparing for that, tragedy struck. The day before the exam, my grandmother, who lived with us and was very close to me, passed away, preventing me from attending the exam. This resulted in a further drop in my grades. Now, as I approached the 5th semester, initially, they said it would be the same as last time, but halfway through, they changed it and announced it would be an online exam. The grading is relative, as you might guess. Everyone was copying. I should mention I have obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, which makes it impossible for me to cheat in exams. In relative grading, I failed a subject with the highest grade scale while most of the others passed, and only 2 of us failed. Given the relative grading system, the passing threshold was set too high for me. In the next semester, I studied exceptionally hard and managed to achieve some good grades, but due to my previous low grades, it was challenging to raise my overall GPA. As a result of failing my exams, I am unable to attend placement opportunities. Now, in my 8th semester, I struggled to improve my grades, but somehow I managed to achieve a GPA of 6.94. To round it up to a 7, I needed to have at least a 6.95 GPA, as the average company cutoff is always set at 7, and naturally, I am still unemployed. Additionally, I have an Instagram page where I have posted 550 times and gained 1,200 followers. I almost forgot to mention that I am a talented artist. I take pride in considering myself one of the best in India. Unfortunately, the art I see from current professionals lacks even 50 of the skill I possess. As an introvert, I struggle to share my work on Instagram, and despite posting some of my finest artwork, I barely received 10 likes. Being born in a country where people are largely uninformed about art, they tend to prioritize fame over creativity. I wish I had been born in a more advanced country. I believe I could have led a better life. I truly hope my situation improves, and I have no intentions of ending my life. I believe in Hinduism, which teaches that taking one's life is a grave sin. Story 3. I learned my mom was my biological mother at 15, discovered my real dad, and now refuse to care for her after her chaotic life choices. This will be a lengthy narrative, so allow me to provide some context. I grew up under the impression that my mother was my sister and that my grandparents were my parents. That was my truth until I turned 15, when my mother insisted that we move to another country together. It was then that she revealed a shocking truth. She was actually my biological mother. I remained silent, needing time to come to terms with this revelation. Shortly after, she delivered yet another shock. She informed me that my biological father was Derek, who had passed away on the very day she disclosed this information. My reaction? Just a simple, okay, nothing more. The following day, she resumed her life as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Meanwhile, I was not speaking to her. I had lost my appetite, and when she offered me food, I declined. She continued to prepare instant noodles for me, which I also refused. That was when she lost her temper, becoming angry and hurling a plate near my head. I found myself in a new school, struggling to communicate in a foreign language, and felt fortunate to have made a few friends. She constantly urged me to be social, yet when I did venture out, she would prohibit me from hanging out with them even for a brief stroll in the park. One day, I took our dog for a quick 30-minute walk, intending to meet my friends afterward. They arrived earlier than I anticipated, so I returned home briefly to drop off the dog. As soon as she spotted me, she shouted in front of my friends, "You said you were walking the dog, so take the dog with you." I explained that I had already done so, but it only fueled her anger. She began yelling even louder, and I felt incredibly humiliated. Life there became intolerable. The only people I interacted with were my mother, her new husband, and his family, none of whom were my age. She recognized my struggles and handpicked my friends from her church. I have never been religious, but she forced me to attend. That is how I met Mona. She was a few years older than I, and although we became somewhat friendly, I never really liked her. One day, my mother treated us both to a spa day. Following that, we went out to eat, and Mona expected me to cover the entire bill. She did not even make an effort to reach for her wallet. It felt as though I had essentially purchased her friendship. My mother permitted older men 25 and up to pursue me, even when I was only 16 or 17. Because they were affiliated with her church, it was viewed as acceptable. She even compelled me to attend a church event with one of the youngest men in the group, still in his 20s. Despite my lack of interest indeed, I found him repulsive. He still attempted to kiss me. I pushed him away and ran into the crowd, then called my stepfather to come and pick me up. I pleaded with her to let me return to my home country, as I could no longer endure living there. She refused, laying on the guilt by reminding me of the money she had invested in getting me there. However, nothing improved. She still would not allow me to spend time with my school friends and insisted that I get a job because that was typical for teenagers in that country. I was eager to work, but whenever I tried, she concocted a myriad of excuses against it. That was the point at which I attempted to take my own life. I ingested all the pills in the house, hoping they would be effective. They were not. I lacked the courage to cut myself or jump off the balcony. She discovered what I had done. Only then did she permit me to return to my home country to live with my grandparents. The flight took 28 hours with layovers, so I intended to stay in the main city for a few days before heading to my grandparents' home, located in another city, 4 to 5 hours away by plane, including layovers. I felt a mix of guilt for leaving her behind, guilt for all the money she had spent. When I shared my plan with her, she lost her temper. She yelled at me, stating that the only reason I was returning was for my grandparents, so I needed to go straight to them. My stepfather was once an ordinary person, with friends and interests, but my mother's controlling nature transformed him. I love him. He was always kind and supportive of me, but now his mind is completely twisted by her manipulation. She frequently quarreled with him after he visited his family, claiming that his mother treated her poorly. Yet, whenever we all visited, his mother was consistently kind, even to me. The only issue was her limited understanding of my mother's broken language, which led her to request clarification. That was enough for my mother to accuse her of disrespect. At one point, I had a boyfriend in the Air Force. My mother admired him, although he was a terrible partner who cheated on me, something she was fully aware of. Then I met my now husband. From the very beginning, she despised him. He is a freelancer, earns a decent income, treats me well, and most importantly, does not pander to her. My mother criticized him to the family, but they were perplexed, as he did not resemble her negative portrayal. She even claimed that my ex-boyfriend was a better match for me. I was furious but realized that bringing it up would be futile. As long as the family recognized who my husband truly was, that was sufficient. Oh, and remember when she told me that Derek was my biological father and that he had died. That was a falsehood. Derek did pass away, but he was not my father. My actual biological father is alive and well. We re-established our connection, and he expressed regret for not finding me sooner. It turns out my mother had threatened him, asserting that if he ever tried to see me, she would have him imprisoned. In that country, wealth allows individuals to bribe the police to do their bidding. My mother's family was quite affluent, while he was impoverished. Currently, I have a wonderful relationship with my biological father. If he ever needs a place to stay when he grows older, my husband and I will gladly welcome him into our home. My mother has consistently stated that I am her retirement plan. She is diabetic, which enables her to live a normal life as long as she takes her medication. Yet, of course, she neglects to do so. One day, she suffered a seizure, turned blue, and had to be rushed to the hospital. Her blood sugar level was over 500. The next day, I booked an early flight, found accommodations which were not inexpensive, and when I arrived, surprise, she had not been taking her medication because it made her feel hungry. Upon regaining consciousness, she threw a fit akin to that of a 5-year-old, refusing further tests and demanding to return home. She loudly insulted the doctors and nurses, dismissing them as incompetent, and suggested she would rather go back to the other country for treatment. She then wondered why they were not particularly kind to her. My aunt and grandmother traveled to the city to assist her. Once she was transferred from urgent care to a regular wing, one of us had to be present at all times, so we took turns. My aunt and my mother have had issues since childhood, but my aunt insisted we still needed to care for her because she is family. That was when I declared, "My husband and I are willing to place her in home care if she requires assistance, but there is no way she is moving in with us." The entire family, with the exception of one cousin, my biological father and his wife, was stunned. They labeled me a selfish person for not wanting to take care of her, insisting that she is my mother and family and that families care for one another. So, am I in the wrong? Edit. My mother's family is no longer wealthy, they are now middle class. Where I come from, we have been taught from a young age that family is paramount, and it is customary to care for family regardless of the dysfunction in the relationships. I have yet to discuss this with my mother, as I am not ready to face the emotional turmoil that will arise when I bring it up. Story 4. Trapped in a toxic relationship, I faced daily control and manipulation that escalated to a violent breakup. After a false domestic violence arrest, I lost my friends, my reputation, and my peace. How did I find the strength to rebuild my life? The beginning. A toxic relationship. It all started in October 2022. I met a man at work, and we became friends, spending time with our coworkers. Over the first year and a half, our relationship was tumultuous. To be honest, at the start, he was a dreadful person, attempting to cheat on me with my friends and treating me poorly. Despite all of this, we moved in together in May 2023. That is when everything truly began to deteriorate. We argued daily, and there was a significant disconnect between us. Around this time, I also began doing OnlyFans, which he had known I was interested in before we even got together. Initially, he claimed to be fine with it, but once I actually started, his behavior changed considerably. He became possessive, needy, and controlling, suffocating me with his presence and jealousy. The control and manipulation, his controlling nature became overwhelming. If I wore a crop top, he would constantly touch me in public to assert dominance over me. I was not allowed to go out with my friends alone. He always had to be present. One time, he threw a tantrum because I planned to go out for a meal with a friend, only to abruptly change his plans so that he could accompany me. His possessiveness reached extreme levels. He expected immediate replies from me, became frantic if I did not respond within an hour, and started waiting outside my workplace for hours just to demand my attention. I had recently started a serious job to launch my career, but he called in sick to sit in the parking lot for nearly 5 hours, insisting that I come outside. He listened in on all my phone calls, forcing me to take them in my car for privacy. He even began lurking outside my door to overhear my conversations. The breaking point, his escalating behavior after months of overwhelming control, we finally broke up. He claimed to have ended things, but then immediately had a meltdown. I left for a few hours to watch a comet, and when I returned, he had completely separated our possessions, destroyed my belongings, and dumped dirty cat litter all over my bed. My MacBook was broken, my light was shattered, and my clothes were scattered everywhere. It was evident that this was not merely a typical breakup. He was unstable. I tried to maintain my distance, but he refused to accept that our relationship was over. He started sneaking into my room at night to observe me while I slept. I installed a hidden camera and caught him entering my room when I was not home. It escalated to the point where I had to buy a lock for my door. One night, he woke me at 4 a.m., yelling at me because I had downloaded Tinder. He kept me awake all night in a fit of rage. On another occasion, his behavior escalated even more. He harmed himself with razor blades, removed his own toenail, and then forced me to clean up the blood. That was when I finally called the police. How he used the system against me, I called the non-emergency line, and it took the police over an hour and a half to arrive. By the time they showed up, he had already left. I explained everything, but they did nothing. The very next night, he escalated things further. I was on FaceTime with my mother while he slammed on my door, demanding to know precisely when I would be moving out. My mother attempted to mediate, but he would not relent. I tried to close the door, but he forced it open, causing me to fall and hit my head on the doorknob. My arms were scraped from rug burn. He hurt his toe in the process, which would later become his evidence. Then, I heard him calling his friends on speakerphone. They urged him to inflict marks on himself and call the police. That is exactly what he did. He slammed himself against the wall, mutilated his toe with nail clippers, and then called the police. The police arrived much more quickly this time in about 10 minutes. I was outside waiting for them, terrified. I saw him laughing and smiling from the top of the apartment complex. I knew this was not going to end in my favor. The officers barely spoke to me. They whispered among themselves and refused to check my injuries, even when I pointed out the bump on my head and my scraped arms. Instead, they informed me that I was being arrested for domestic violence. He had marks and was bleeding, which was all they seemed to care about. He had harmed himself deliberately, and it worked. I was taken to jail. I had to pay over $5,000 in bail, money I never recovered. My stepfather covered part of it, but ultimately the entire ordeal left me financially and emotionally drained. I was completely shattered. The aftermath, escaping and rebuilding after my arrest, he tormented me for the next 10 days while I secretly arranged to leave. He kept me awake all night, threatening to call the police on me again. He told me he would press charges. The worst part? He leaked my OnlyFans link to everyone I knew: my boss, my parents, my family, and anyone who would listen to him. He portrayed me as a crazy, abusive monster. All of our mutual friends sided with him. They believed his lies, and I lost my entire social circle overnight. Eventually, I found an apartment. I rushed the process, packed everything while he was at work, and moved out without saying a word. I took my cats and left him behind. Legally, I was acquitted due to a lack of evidence. The charges were dropped, but the damage was done. The trauma he caused still lingers. To this day, I panic when someone knocks on my door. I have nightmares about him. I do not trust men. I have isolated myself because I am afraid of letting anyone get close to me again. This is the first time I am sharing my side of the story. No one ever wanted to hear it before. But this is what happened to me, and I need people to understand how easily the system can be manipulated by the wrong person.